So, um, so earlier today we had a panel discussion about direct air capture, which is a mechanism for pulling carbon out of the air and sequestering it through technological means, blowing, vacuum cleaners that suck air out of the sky, using our engineering capabilities. In this panel, we're going to be talking about the engineering capabilities of nature and our ability to collaborate and cooperate with nature to restore the planet, to both pull carbon out of the atmosphere and put it into biological structures, but in so doing to create co-benefits. And one of the key themes here is going to be, how do we multi-solve? How can we solve for biodiversity, for soil water retention, for other benefits we're going to hear about, while pulling carbon out of the atmosphere and tackling the climate crisis? Because as many may have heard that described, we are in a polycrisis of biodiversity, of food security, of climate, of water. And so we have to be thinking about these challenges holistically. Nature-based solutions are often advocated as an approach to doing so. So we have a couple of innovators who are working in the nature-based solutions space, as well as an investor from Superorganism, Kevin Webb, who has been placing capital bets on these and working to build the ecosystem. So the theme of today is, how do we plant these seeds, which is an apt metaphor for nature-based solutions, and also tend to the soil and the water and the sun and the sky and the air and nutrients that we need for these things to succeed in the broader innovation ecosystems. So I'll invite our three innovators to introduce yourselves and what you've been doing in this space and your outlook on the nature-based solutions.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Marie-Noëlle Keizer. I'm the founder and CEO of WeForest. We're a Belgian NGO, actually international, acting in Africa and South America and restoring forest landscapes. Forest landscapes is more than planting trees. It's addressing, with a holistic approach, all the needs of the environment in order to work for climate, for people, for biodiversity, for water. I don't know who was in the room when you heard about Jay talking before. I mean, the correlation between the carbon and the water is absolutely fundamental. I think if you didn't hear it properly from him, you need to hear it again, because this is really the key to everything that we do. And so...
So is the... Can we do it? Is nature-based solutions and this afforestation, are you feeling... what's been the arc? What I'd be curious about, actually, is we've been hearing about nature-based solutions and various different kinds of carbon credit schemes for both protecting and restoring forests for the last 20 years. You've been involved in this field for some time.
15 years.
15 years. What's been the arc of your what's been the emotional arc of this in terms of your level of optimism and conviction about this as a space of solutions?
Yeah, it's a very good question, actually. I think people didn't really get it, and people have been critique towards reforestation as the solution because of the non-permanence and saying when you plant a tree, it doesn't stay there forever. But I think we're not at this level of the discussion right now. We know that forest landscape restoration, nature-based solutions are actually the best technology to take the carbon out of the atmosphere, the excess carbon that we have, and also the water vapor. Remember what Jay was saying, you cannot dissociate the carbon cycle from the water cycle. There's currently a very negative feedback loop between the two. He said that, and I'm going to repeat that because this is super important. And I didn't know Jay before I came here, by the way. So 1.5 degree warmer is 10.5% more water vapor in the atmosphere. It is the most powerful greenhouse gases. If we leave it there, it's going to continue to feed this negative feedback loop and warm the planet. So more water vapor, that is more greenhouse gas, therefore a warmer planet. A warmer planet, more water vapor. That's where we are stuck today. We're stuck there. Why? Because we still are deforesting. We're losing the equivalent of Spain every 10 years. We're deforesting. So we're losing actually twice Spain, but organizations like us are reforesting once Spain. So we're losing every 10 years once Spain. We need to stop tropical deforestation and we need to reverse that. And look at this, it would be this feedback loop that we're talking about is going to be reversed. We're going to have an incredible cooling of the planet. plus all the other things, all the other co-benefits that you mentioned, which is biodiversity. You know, in the work we do, we create biodiversity corridors in order for the animals to thrive. Poverty alleviation. We actually empower people to protect our forests and give them alternatives so that they don't have to make firewood and cut the trees. The experience that I have with planting 100 million trees in Africa is that we lifted 500,000 people out of extreme poverty, giving them going from $1 a day for the family to $2 a day. Sounds very small for us. It is huge for them. So those are all the things we can do with nature-based solution. And there is no better technology today. We need to do it. We know we can pay for it. We know we can do it. There's enough degraded land in the world to restore and to take care of this.
Thank you. Thank you. Could you just say a quick word about kind of the business model or operating model for WeForest? How do you do the work that you do?
Yeah. First, I just want to say something a little bit personal. Why did I start engaging in this after a very successful international business career? Well, like maybe many of you, I saw Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth, and that really hits me. And I had no choice. I had to do it. And also, I have a son, and I wanted to leave a better planet behind. So very personally, this is how I engage in this, and I've dedicated my life to this. I've done that for 15 years. And because I have a corporate background, and my husband as well, we had a very big network. So I reached out to corporates, and I offered a simple solution. Initially, it was, you guys work with us and plant trees. And then it evolved because we learned, I have now a team of scientists, and we do forest landscape restoration with a holistic and scientific approach. But that's how I started. So I have raised $70 million in the last 15 years, 80% from corporates, 20% from philanthropy. And it took me 15 years to restore and plant, 100,000 hectares with 100 million trees and lift 500,000 people out of poverty. Well, with the proper funding, with the organizations that we have, with the science and the skills that we have, we can double that in the next 5 years. So all of those NGOs and organizations that do the same are ready for scaling. We need funding. We need philanthropists to help seed those projects and develop and de-risk them. We need all the corporates to fund them ongoingly. And then the carbon investment is also a very important asset that we need to also include.
Nice. Most of us are lucky if we plant 1 or 2 trees, so I appreciate the millions of them. Tiago, so those of us in the room who have been reading the Financial Times just saw a pretty major announcement about your company getting a major deal, building on your earlier deal with Microsoft to get carbon credits for the work that you do. Could you describe a bit about ReGreen and where you're at and what you're up to?
Hi, everyone. I'm Tiago Piccolo. I'm the CEO of ReGreen. Like Marie-Noelle here, we work in ecological restoration. So basically, we enter areas that have been deforested in the past, in our case, decades, sometimes even centuries ago. Currently, they're used for extensive cattle ranching, which is a very, very low return activity. It's a very low return activity for the ranch owners. It's a very low return activity for those who work around it. And it's obviously very low return activity for society. We use certain algorithms that we built to try to understand which sites are ideal for restoration, which are the models that we should use. I think you said it perfectly. It's a science. We have 14 PhDs on staff, and then we use a variety of methods, some more intensive, some less, depending on the condition of the land in order to restore the forest. Regardless of which methods we choose to use, and it's often multiple methods within the same property, the end goal is always to end up with a 5-star restored forest, which means that not only is the physical composition of the forest restored, but all the ecosystem processes that we benefit from, that give resilience to the forest, are also restored. And you mentioned Microsoft. I think they are seen as one of the leading companies in the sector. They have made very bold net zero commitments, very bold nature commitments. They play not only in nature, but they play in engineered solutions as well. And I think they look for scale and they look for quality. So I think we're very happy to have them as partners, very happy to have the second deal done with them. And I think it really changes the game for us from a reputational standpoint, from an image standpoint, to validation, but also from a capital standpoint. It's much easier to raise funds to do what we do, which is capital intensive, having a contract from Microsoft, having a set price, a set quantity, a curve which will follow, than if we were just raising it just straight equity on a promise on our business plan.
Now, I could do afforestation by planting a eucalyptus plantation, right? A monoculture. And I would put away a certain amount of carbon. You restore something that looks more like an indigenous biodiverse forest. If I put away the same amount of carbon with those two different things, do you command a higher price for the 5-star forest? Is the carbon market rewarding that type of activity, or do you think we need some additional crediting mechanism, biodiversity credits or something along those lines to support this kind of work?
I think it is rewarding, but it should be rewarding it even more. I think the more discerning buyers, they won't even touch a credit that comes from a monoculture eucalyptus forest, and that's due to a concept called additionality. It's already profitable enough to plant eucalyptus, right? I mean, you're going to plant it, you're going to harvest it, you're going to generate returns. So why issue any credits based on that? I think the buyers that have high quality standards, they appreciate a couple things about a fully native biodiverse forest. The first one, as I mentioned in the beginning, is the resilience. Now, it's very different. The way a monocultural eucalyptus forest burns is much more combustible than a forest which has 400 different species. Yeah, some of them, more susceptible, some less, but it's something that nature has evolved over time in order to be resilient to things like fire, right? The second one is we don't have just a climate crisis. Now, even if we had the best possible machine to suck carbon out of the air, it would do nothing for the 70% of species loss that we've had over the last 30, 40 years. So I think companies also see that they have a role in reversing that trend, in addressing that crisis, and restoring forests, thinking about connectivity, doing it in the right places is absolutely fundamental for us to solve that problem.
Thank you. Jason, you're doing something slightly different from afforestation, but it's another nature-based solution. I saw a very cool image and demo of it out in the tables, which hopefully you will as well. Could you describe and paint the picture in words?
Yeah, so I'm the CEO of Applied Carbon. We are in the biochar space. So biochar is, some people call it a nature-based solution, some people call it an engineered solution. It was actually an indigenous technology developed 2,000 years ago in the Amazon. As my co-panelists have noted, the best and most efficient way to remove CO2 from the atmosphere is via biology and via biomass. Someone likened CO2 removal to trying to pull a red ping pong ball out of a stadium full of white ping pong balls. It's very energy intensive to do that, but plants do it naturally, and they do it as a byproduct of their own growth. The challenge is, once that carbon is drawn down in the plant, how do you store it durably in the ground or on the earth, and how do you very precisely measure it? And biochar addresses those challenges fairly directly. So the core concept is we take that material, we convert it from a fast decomposing form of carbon, the biomass, into fixed permanent carbon, a char. So almost like a graphite. We do this using a thermal process, a high temperature process, and it's actually an exothermic, energy efficient process. So energy is released in the process. And by doing that, we can extend the potential of nature-based solutions. We can take nature-based solutions and make them into true permanent carbon removal. The research shows that the carbon in biochar is stable in the soil. The latest research shows potentially for millions of years. And what's exciting is the cost of biochar production is, 20% the cost of other engineered solutions of direct air capture, because the most energy intensive part, the drawdown, is being done by biology, by the plants. So this is a very exciting field. Biochar today is about 80% of the engineered carbon removal market. It's both the largest and fastest growing segment. What we do at Applied Carbon that's a little bit different, we're making the biochar from agricultural residue. So we're actually making it from the waste of broadacre corn production, wheat production, rice production. These are the most widely grown crops around the world, billions and billions of tons of CO2 are drawn down every year in these crops with no use, no commercial use. It just goes back into the atmosphere. We have developed a machine that can cost effectively convert those materials in the field into biochar. And the best part of it is it's also good for the soil. When we put that biochar back on the soil, our field trials and those of many, many others show it boosts the farmer's income. It boosts their crop yield by 15%. Just lots and lots of benefits. So very exciting stuff. And, I think that we're kind of standing on the shoulders of giants here. We're taking, what's being done in nature-based solutions and addressing some of the challenges, head on, and really trying to address the economics. I mean, I believe biochar, there's a world where biochar scales without carbon credits, just based on the benefits.
And if there are direct economic benefits, you kind of remove the additionality to kind of the analogy to the eucalyptus forest. So maybe you have to operate without.
I will make a hot take here. I think if we're having a discussion about additionality, we've missed the point. We need to scale up removals. We need to focus on scaling up drawdown now. We need to worry about what the economic mechanism is that underlies it later.
Yeah. I think this is a really, really interesting point, right? And it's something that we should underscore, is that we need to be celebrating restoration of forests, restoration of soil carbon. The fact that you're doing that is a good thing for the climate. The reason that it's a problem, when it's a problem, is that somebody is saying, I have permission to burn this coal, oil, and gas because over here somebody is doing what these guys are doing. We can actually decouple those things, right? And sort of focus on how do we just get the great projects done? How do we get the carbon into the trees and the soil? And then it's a separate question about carbon market integrity to ask about who gets to have permission to burn fossil fuels as a result of your work. And what's interesting about the evolution of these models over time is that your model didn't necessarily have anything to do with whether people were burning carbon or not, right? The companies are just restoring forests, employing people as, you could do that just as sort of a local CSR project. So I think there's a very interesting phenomenon here about how do we get this work done without coupling it to the fossil economy.
I know it's going to be your turn, but I just wanted to answer that one. This is fundamental indeed. Like everybody knows SBTI, science-based targets. This is what companies are signing up to decarbonize their supply chain. And that's exactly what you're talking about, which, they're buying carbon credit. I mean, they're reducing, and then there's a residual which they offset. So this is great, but this is not good enough. This is too late, and this is not enough. And so what even SBTI is saying to the corporates, to the responsible corporates, is take responsibility beyond your supply chain. So beyond this whole offsetting thing, and look at what you have dumped into the atmosphere since the beginning of your existence as a company, what you are historically, what you are going to continue dumping until 2050 by when you're going to be net zero, and be responsible. And then you don't have to support projects that are carbon certified. You just need to be supporting organizations that do scientific work in measuring the carbon sequestration and all the other benefits. Because the other thing I want to say is carbon certification is not the only solution. There's a lot of money that goes into carbon certification to pay consultants, which are actually not adding value to the climate. They're just making themselves, a nice job in certifying and reviewing documents. This is where a lot of money goes. We need to use the money that there is to something else, which is also restoring beyond the value chain.
Thank you. So now we're going beyond the project and company level to thinking about the ecosystem. So you're investing in organizations like this. First, tell us about your investment approach at Superorganism, and what do you see as needed in order to build a healthy ecosystem of these types of projects?
Such a good question. Also, thank you so much for having this panel. I think nature gets so frequently forgotten in the climate conversation. But it's the other side of the same coin, right? It's evidence that the way we are inhabiting this earth is incongruous with the way that our natural systems work. So, couple stats for you. First, over 50% of global GDP is directly dependent or indirectly dependent on nature. So you can think of that as soil health. You can think of that as fresh water. You can think about that as pollination or mangroves that are able to stop waves from hitting us. But at the same time, since 1970, we've lost 73% of global wildlife populations. You know, nature is dramatically in decline in a number of different places. It's unevenly spread, but it's worth paying attention to. And so our view with Superorganism is, what if we took a climate tech approach? So a great climate tech VC would focus on what are all the companies, what are all the industries that are responsible for emitting CO2 or that have the potential to bring CO2 down. What if we did the same thing with biodiversity? So just like climate, biodiversity is caused by many of the biggest industries on the planet. So if we could find companies that could disrupt or transition them, we think it's an equally large opportunity. So at Superorganism, we have 3 core thematic focuses. The first is that industrial focus. So where can we find startups that can make a significant dent on literal extinction drivers? So that's pollution, that's habitat loss, that's overexploitation, so overhunting, overfishing, and invasive species. I was hoping Olivia would be here, but we're in a cool company that's somewhere around Davos that is making high-end luxury leather out of invasive species like Burmese python in the Everglades. It's really cool. Hopefully she can show you a demo. But second big theme for us is all about that nature and carbon story. What are all the intersection points between climate and conservation, biodiversity? So we do tech for nature-based solutions. We look at things like wildfires, soil, water, where there's a climate and a conservation story. We're also very interested in how do we get to a net zero transition in a way that minimizes harms to nature, so we can speed up that transition but do better by wildlife in the process. And then finally, we do deep tech. So we're looking at AI, remote sensing, genomics, but our specific advantage is in the hands of conservationists, can this let them do something new or to do more with less? So that's us in a nutshell. 18 investments so far. The good news so far is that it seems to be working. Over half our companies from pre-seed seed are now at over $1 million in run rate. A couple of them have hit across 10. And then the impacts, we just did our first impact report internally. 50,000 invasive species removed, 500 metric tons CO2e. I know that's nothing compared to what you all have done, but we're starting. And then 1 million birds that have been tracked through AI sensors. So trying to make sure that as we deploy new renewable infrastructure, we're taking into account the wildlife.
Super cool. We met at Davos 2 years ago. I think, what was it, 1 year ago? And things were like much earlier on. So to hear all this progress is just fantastic. Really cool. We're quite short on time, but I just want to just hear one thought from you, Kevin, about if we wanted to build the ecosystem, right? The supportive context for these types of companies to thrive. What's one thing that you see missing that others in the room here could help to fill in?
Here's the dirty little secret about nature and nature tech opportunities is that they make incredible stories. So climate is the mother of all systems problems, right? You could do whatever you want to do, but at most you're impacting a fraction of the total CO2 excess problem, right? With nature, with wildlife, you can see the differences in a short amount of time. And the companies that we work with are frequently making very real, very visual impacts in a short amount of time. So I think we need to be telling more of the stories of hope, optimism. I also think we've created this false binary that you can either succeed financially or you can have nature. I think there's a lot of conservationists who don't believe that business can be part of the solution. And I think the inverse is true too. So we need more of these ands out there to just try to create a different narrative.
Awesome. Thank you so much to our panelists. Please join me in thanking them. And if you'd like to connect with any of them, the networking space is open. Thank you. All right, and we're going to have up our next